Welcome to the Vendador Table. This week we are going to be making one of my favorite dishes, which are roasted beets with winter fruit and also a charred nectarine vinaigrette. So follow along to learn how to make this from start to finish. So the first thing we'll do is start roasting our beets. Either peel the entire thing like I'm about to do, or you can choose to just leave it whole and then skin them afterwards. Whatever is your preference. You can save the peels, and this is actually how you'll make your dehydrated beet powder, or you can purchase it. But if you don't have a dehydrator, just throw it directly into the oven at a very low heat and then just blitz it into a powder. And now we'll just wrap them up and put them in the oven. So the oven's at around 400. I'm gonna throw these in for about 45 minutes and then check them. It might take a little bit longer. It might take you up to an hour and a half depending on the temperature, just until the fork goes through, and then we can take them out and cool them down. Next, we'll get in our pistachios while we have our beets roasting. So beautiful Sicilian pistachios. I'm just gonna hit them very lightly with a little bit of olive oil and some salt. Give them a good little mix. I'm gonna put them in initially at the same temperature for like 4 minutes and then check them after that. It is pretty hot, so just make sure you keep your eyes on them. Next, we're gonna juice our blueberries. You don't have to use blueberries. I just think that blueberries and beets are a really awesome flavor combination, but if you wanna use another berry or another fruit, it works really, really well. So we have our blueberry juice. We're gonna weigh out 100 grams of it directly into a pot. And then I've also got some simple syrup that's already made. So I'm going in with 125 grams of this now. And I'm gonna get this over the heat, going slowly. In the meantime, we're going to weigh out our agar. Basically, it'll just kind of help gel this. And if you want it to stay, vegan, and you don't want to use gelatin, you can use agar instead, which I really kind of prefer. The general rule of thumb is 1% of agar to the weight of whatever the liquid is that you're using. So in this case, it was 225 grams in total, meaning we'll have 2.25 grams of agar altogether. We have to shear this in little by little to make sure that it gets really well hydrated in there. You're gonna wanna boil this now for a minimum of 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes, depending on the strength of your agar. This is pretty strong, so 1 minute is plenty. But you really wanna make sure that you are boiling this, otherwise it'll just not set. It needs to come up to a boil for it to be activated. Okay, so it's been about a minute. We're gonna take it off our heat now, and we've got this 1/8 pan here that's ready to go, and I'm just gonna pour it directly over it. So just get this into the cooler, get it cold as fast as you can, and then we can start blending it. And then we're going to move to our charred nectarine vinaigrette. So I'm just gonna cut them right down the middle. They're just so beautiful. And what I wanna do is just get a really hard sear on them and get them a little bit charred. It'll just add a little bit of complexity to their flavor. So while we've got these charring, I'm just gonna get started on the vinaigrette. It's gonna be olive oil, a 1/2 cup of rice wine vinegar, rosemary and thyme. I'm gonna add a little bit of Aleppo pepper and also some juniper. Very much floral notes to go with the blueberries. Salt, and of course, freshly cracked black pepper. So our nectarines have been charring. Let's check on them. They got a good little sear right there. So I'm gonna put mine in a vacuum seal bag and just vacuum them and leave them overnight along with the other ingredients. If you don't have one of these in a deli is just fine. Just crush them and make sure that they're staying submerged. So going in with the rest of this. From this point, I'm just gonna crush them. I wanna get all the juices from the nectarines as well. You'll see when you try it yourself that it's kind of astringent. It has like that almost like burnt orange taste, but it pairs really well with the olive oil, and it pairs really well with the rice wine vinegar and the juniper, and especially when you get the beets involved, it just makes so much sense because they're just so earthy that all the brightness and the charredness from this really kind of helps the actual flavor of the beets as well. So you want to let this sit in your fridge overnight and let it really kind of marinate. So our pistachios have been toasted. Just gonna pull them off now. Set them to the side until later on. So now we're gonna smoke our creme fraiche. I've got our container here. I've got the creme fraiche. I think that I really enjoy it because it kind of has this like cultured taste to it. So I'm gonna lay it as flat as I can, so I can give as much surface area as possible. And I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. From there, I'm gonna take my trusty smoke gun and puncture it through just like this. I'm using cedar to smoke this time around. So it's been about 20 minutes, all the smoke has dissipated. So I'm just gonna take our cover off here, and I'm gonna add in a little bit of our beetroot powder. I'm just gonna go in with a little tablespoon of it. It's really more so for coloration. Now we can just take the smoked beet creme fraiche, just set it to the side until we're ready to use it. Next, we'll work on the fruit portion of it. So I've got an orange, navel orange here. Just gonna go ahead and supreme. So we've got our supremes ready to the side, and then I've got this beautiful teardrop plum. And the whole purpose of this kind of beet dish is for it to be as fresh as possible. So I don't want to manipulate it way too much. I'm gonna serve it raw, but I'm gonna get them to mimic the shape of the supreme. So that's why I'm doing this right here. Now that we've got them, we'll just set them to the side until we need them, along with our supremes. Now we're gonna go into compressing our curls of chili. These are just like the jingle bell peppers. I really love using Fresnos, but just couldn't find them this week, and so we're left with these. And from here, I'm just gonna remove the majority of the seeds and flesh. This will really help with the curling. The less of the flesh there is, the more of the skin that you can get, the more of a curling effect that you can get on these. Now I'm just gonna be squaring them off a little bit so I can get really nice juliennes out of it. So getting it to be a rectangle really helps. So now we've got our rectangle is ready to go. I'm just gonna go ahead and julienne it. I filled it with enough ice and water so that there's this empty space at the bottom here. If you put it right among the actual ice cubes themselves, it won't allow them to curl because all the ice is in the way. So just make sure that they have a lot of room to move around. Just let them hang out with plenty of ice on the side, and then they'll be ready in no time. So it's been about 45 minutes. We've got our blueberry gel that's been hanging out in the fridge. Kind of a fun texture. You can do whatever you want with this. You can cut it into small cubes and just serve it as it is, but we're gonna blend it. From there, we're just going to pass it through a little strainer, make sure that there's no really large chunks. From here, you can do a couple of things. You can either just put it into a piping bag directly, or if you have a vacuum sealer, put it in the actual vacuum sealer with no lid on and just set it on 100. And basically what it'll do is take out any of the air bubbles that were created during that mixing process. It's totally your choice. I'm just gonna put mine through the vacuum sealer and I'll show you guys what it looks like in a second. So this went into the vacuum sealer one time. It's not a crazy difference, but it is a difference. And so if you prefer it to be a little bit more intense in color, then you can definitely do this step. From there, I'm just gonna transfer it to a piping bag. From there, I have a little squeeze bottle. This is how I would keep it for service. This is definitely the best way to do this. Do not try to get it into the bottle already from that step. It'll just be a mess every single time. Just take the second to do it right. And there you have it. This is a little blueberry gelée. Okay, so it's the next day. We've got our vinaigrette that was hanging out overnight. You see we've got all this amazing, delicious liquid right here. So we're just gonna go ahead and get all of this out. Let's give this a little bit of a taste. It's got an awesome color to it. It's so delicious and so intense, front facing, but it also has those charred notes and a little bit of the bitterness, because we just kept the entire pith on too. So it'll go really, really well with all the other floral and earthy tones that we have in the dish. So our beets were roasted through, and then they were cooled down. So now we're just gonna go ahead and portion them. I just want them to be bite-sized and very organic in shape, so I'm not gonna cut them into perfect squares or anything. We've got our charred nectarine vinaigrette that we're just gonna place all over the beets. You can compress these with the beets overnight if you really want to. I'm gonna add a little bit of a flaky salt to it. Just give it a little bit of a mix. Set these aside until we're ready to plate. We're gonna take our pepper curls out of the water. As you can see, they've really had the chance to kind of curl. So we'll add this to our tray. We'll also slice a couple of raw blueberries. Set these aside with the rest of our mise en place. So it's a cold dish, which really helps. We'll start off with our beet creme fraiche. Soft peaks on this is totally fine, and they're gonna get covered. Just gonna do a couple of them at the bottom. So we're gonna go in with our beets. I don't need a ton of vinaigrette, but I do want a little bit of vinaigrette at the bottom pooling so that everything else also gets the flavors. From there, I'm gonna add a couple of pistachios. Also wanna hide these a little bit. They're gonna really provide an awesome crunch factor. We've got our blueberry gelée. Couple of pieces of our plum. And then moving on to our grapefruit. A couple of blueberries. And of course, a couple of curls. I'm finishing with a few mint leaves. And a touch of crunchy salt right on top. It's so good. The beet is perfectly earthy, and the sweetness that comes from the gelée and the crunch from the pistachio. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching us make this from start to finish. If you really loved it, please share it with all of your friends and make sure to like and subscribe for more.